Hello and welcome to another episode of Laptop Retrospective, and today we have a special guest here in our Project X video series, and you might not be able to tell exactly what it is when you first look at it. There are a couple of clues that you can pinpoint the age before we even open this particular ThinkPad up. The very astute among you will notice the direction that the logos face, not only on the top case, but as well on the interior case. This is inducive of certain ThinkPads of a certain era. Now, if we open it up a little further, you'll notice that this particular trackpad is textured, has two buttons, as well as the track point. Okay, no big deal. You'll also notice that there's this little plastic gap, which means these two pieces are quite separate indeed. You might notice that the buttons up along the side, well, they're at the side, they're not at the back. Okay, if you haven't figured it out, here we go. This is an original X1 right there. So many people don't really know that this computer exists. A lot of people believe that the X1 series starts with the X1 Carbon, and that is not correct. Just to give you a bit of history, the X1 was the predecessor to the X301 as a 13.3 inch display ThinkPad. For those of you that aren't familiar with the X301, there was a considerable amount of changes made to this machine. Not only did you have new processors and chipsets, but you also had a Gorilla Glass outdoor-friendly display. It was very thin, you had no optical drive, it changed the entire design of the chassis. It was now a 6-row keyboard as opposed to the traditional 7-row. Integrated battery with battery slice option, and we'll talk more about the battery in a minute. No ThinkLight was located at the top, and of course your port selection changed entirely. This particular unit was equipped with a series of different CPUs, and I'll list them up here on the screen for you, going all the way from i3 to i7s. This one is in the middle of the road, and it is an i5-2520M, so it's not that far off from, say, an X220 in terms of its processor capability. Like many ThinkPads of this size, it is a soldered-on CPU with no opportunity to upgrade. Regardless of what CPU option you go with, it will be an Intel HD 3000 chipset, and all of these models shipped with the same display, which was 1366 by 768, so you're not going to be getting a Super HD display or anything like that. Your RAM options were available as 2, 4, or 8 gigabytes, 8 being the maximum allowed because there is only one DIMM slot on the inside. Hard drives were pretty much what you would expect. So with that being said, let's go ahead and walk through some of the main features. We do have a textured trackpad, we have a fingerprint reader, track point, dedicated buttons. We do have a backlit keyboard, and our function buttons are down the right hand side. Power, your ThinkVantage or BIOS button, as I like to call it, your mute for your microphone, your toggle for your volume, as well as your volume mute button. There is a web camera located at the top of the display, as one can expect. If we close the device and take a look at our port selection, it's actually not too bad. We do have these plastic covers covering some of the ports, so if we pull this one away, we will see the headphone microphone combo jack and USB on the front. We've got absolutely nothing. On the right hand side, we have a SD card slot, the hardware kill switch for the Wi-Fi, and the hard disk drive access bay. Along the back, we have network, we have a SIM card slot, USB 3.0, we have HDMI, mini display, and then over here we have 1x eSATA USB combo port. Crazy, right? And then lastly, we do have our standard ThinkPad 20 volt barrel plug connector right next to our Kensington lock. So as you can see, the X1 is actually pretty well supported in terms of ports. Now, before you get too excited about tracking one of these down yourself, there's one thing that I will tell you right up in advance. Batteries for this are expensive and rare. If you are getting one of these, the chances of having good battery life is probably not going to be great in the year 2019, considering how old this machine is. So be prepared that if you want this fully functioning, to track down either the battery slice that attaches to the bottom or a new internal battery. I'll leave some links to some possible places you can get these, but do expect to pay a premium for them. In fact, you might find them just as expensive as the machine, if not more. Before we go ahead and turn it on, however, let's flip this over and disassemble it. But because the battery is internal, you would want to make sure that you're going into the BIOS and disabling the battery from there. Because this battery does not work, it has already been disabled and disconnected inside by the original owner. So let's go ahead and flip this over and start the disassembly process. Thankfully, like most ThinkPads, the disassembly process for this is going to be relatively easy. All of our screw holes are clearly marked and indicated. The very first thing that we will do is go ahead and remove the screw for the hard disk drive. We can go ahead and grab our tab and pull the drive out. This one is stiff. Oh, my goodness. Okay, let's continue with our disassembly. So just like all good ThinkPads, our screws are labeled, and this one seems to literally be holding everything in. It's marked for the RAM, keyboard, and the palm rest, as well as this screw. So there are two screws that we for sure need to remove to gain access. Now that those screws are removed, we're going to turn the machine over, open it up, and of course it lies flat because it's a ThinkPad. And we'll do our keyboard wiggle, and this one is just right and ready to pop out. We have two ribbon cables here. Easily removed. There's your part number, all of that good stuff that we would expect. On the inside, we can see the ribbon cable for the trackpad. We can see our Wi-Fi card. We can see the drive bay. We can see a few connectors here. Our CMOS battery is here. Our single DIMM slot for RAM is here. One thing that is absent from this point of view is actually the main battery. So, because that is important to see, we're going to flip the machine over and remove the remainder of the screws to see if the battery is located on the other side of the chassis. Go underneath the corner here and start popping a few clips. It is worth pointing out that you're going to want to disconnect this cable here. We're also going to flip up the cable for the trackpad. We also need to remove the wires for the Wi-Fi module. And we can see just inside there that the battery makes up the case underneath of the palm rest. So let's go ahead and reassemble this unit and see what else we can learn about it. Okay, now that we have it back together, we are going to need to use external power since the battery is not in a state of cooperation. And we'll go ahead and turn it on. It is also worth pointing out this particular unit is equipped with Bluetooth. As you can see, it's not the absolute fastest tool that we've ever seen out of this shed, but it's still adequate. So ladies and gentlemen, there really isn't a whole lot else to say. It's a ThinkPad, but because of when it was made, it was definitely during a transition time, and there are certain features that show. The fact that the internal batteries are very difficult to find and are very expensive, unfortunately, truly inhibits this machine from any sort of longevity in the third-party market. If you are able to find a battery for one of these and you really, really want to have one, then that's perfectly fine. But if you're looking at one of these and thinking that you might have found yourself a cheap laptop, make sure that that battery is in good condition, because if not, you could actually be starting your own money pit there. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section. And before I let you go, there are the big four here. Please like the video, share it, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so when the next part of the Project X series is released, you will be one of the first people to see it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.